Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are gathered here today for story time, and today is Mrs. Janet Davis will share her story. In week 2, we heard her husband tell us his life story. So today we get the other half of the story. So we're just so grateful for Janet for telling her life story. And let's sit back and relax, listen intently, and prepare a few questions to ask towards the end. My phone is ringing. I'll turn it off in 1 second. But let's have a word of prayer as she prepares to come. She said that she's a little nervous, so let's pray that her nerves go away. Our Lord and our God, once again, we come before your throne of grace to pray. And we thank you so much, Lord God, for this sacred hour of sharing life story. So, Lord God, we thank you for Miss Janet Davis, for her life and for her journey, and for leading her to this day where she has the opportunity to share with all of us, and we have the opportunity to hear her life story. And we pray that something will be said, something will be heard, Lord God, that will help us all to become better individuals and better servants of your will. So, Lord, we thank you now. We ask that you remove the nervousness from Miss Janet even now. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, I don't know what these nerves are about because I've lived here for 50 years. And I love doing the programs on Wednesday night and all that, but somehow it's too much. It's too many years, and I can't get all the good stuff in. And I don't know how we got here. I just read a quote somewhere about the future comes at 1,000 miles an hour to everybody. Boy, doesn't it? I mean, the last time I looked, I was a kid. And I don't think I am a kid anymore. And the last time I looked, I was a redhead, and I was supposed to be a redhead. I don't see that anymore. And it's just weird. It's just weird times. Well, I was born on January 6th in Springfield, Missouri. That's the Queen City of the Ozarks, if you don't know that. And it was a good place to grow up. It really was. I attended Boulevard Baptist Church. It was called that because it was on National Avenue, which went all the way from north to south across the city. And so it was the Boulevard. And I grew up there. My mom and I walked to church on Sunday morning most of the time because it wasn't very far away, 3 or 4 blocks. I had a whole bunch of girlfriends there. There were a bunch of nice-looking boys there, too, when I was a teenager. And that's where I got my first boyfriend. I met him there at church. And we went together all through high school, and then he went off to one place, and I went off to another, and that was kind of the end of that. Lucille, by the way, sent me an email saying she couldn't be here, but I had to speak loud enough that she could hear me from wherever she is today. So if I don't speak loud enough, yell at me or something. Where am I going? Okay, I was born in Springfield. I was born on January 6th. I was an Epiphany baby, and I didn't know that term when I was born, but I sure do like it now. I like Epiphany. That's when the wise men came, and it's kind of nice, kind of nice. I had one brother who had informed my mother that he absolutely did not want another sister, and she failed him big. She brought me along. And I had one sister. They were both they were young teenagers in high school when I was born. So I was absolutely the baby of the family forevermore, and I really liked it. And then one day I woke up and realized that being the baby meant I'd be last. They'd all be gone. And they are. They're all gone. So I'm representing my family. I was born to the Gordons, G-O-R-D-E-N. My dad insisted on the E, not O-E. So I am Janet Gordon Davis. That's who I am. And I got my name. I love this story. Mom kind of didn't have any idea about the name. So she let my brother and sister name me. And they named, my middle name was Marie. They named me that after a woman up the street who baked cookies for them. I don't think I ever met her. I think she's gone before I knew she was there. And the first name, they put all these names in a sugar bowl. That's why I'm so sweet, because they I tell Ben that a lot, that's why I'm so sweet. And they drew names out of the sugar bowl. And I never did think to ask, I wonder who put in Janet, because I really have liked my name. It's a nice old Scottish name, and I think our background is pretty much Scottish. And I like being Janet Marie Davis. I still do, or Janet Marie Gordon, then Janet Marie Davis now. I like that name. It's always been good to me. Well, my sugar bowl is still with me. I've got it. It's at home with a lot of flowers in it. Because Ben, I said I would tell you something about Ben, and I'm going to say a few nice things about him, like this one. He gets out and he makes flower gardens for me. And I used to make my own. Now I don't have enough oomph to do it. And he digs, and this hasn't been my best timing right here. And I couldn't get out there and plant the flowers and dig up the soil, but he did it. And we got the prettiest zinnias you've ever seen. They are all across the front of the house. They're all throughout the house. We like flowers. My family, let me tell you just briefly, if I can be brief, about them. My mom was named Evelyn, and she loved to read. She would work all day long, you know, as if she were going to work. And she would cook and she would sew and she did all these things. But when we had dinner, and after dinner dishes were done, it was her time. And she read and read and read and read, and sometimes she'd read to me if I pestered her long enough. And that, I think, is where I got my love of reading. I read like crazy all the time. And I'm going to go home and read now that I finally got this speech together. I haven't read a book in the last month. And I got a bunch of them stacked up. Mom was one of 12 children, and many of them were gone. They died when they were babies. But at some point in Mom's life, she was the middle child, and she had to quit school in 10th grade because my grandma went blind. They gave her the wrong medicine, was the story I've heard, and she put it in her eye and she went blind. Now, Grandma lived up the street about 3 blocks away from us, and when I started going to grade school, I had to hurry up and learn how to read because somebody had to read to Grandma. And we read our way through the Idylls of the King. She liked Tennyson. We read our way through most all of Tennyson, and I kind of grew up to love Tennyson and poetry, and I wanted to major in Tennyson when I went to college, but there's nobody there who taught it, so, so I just kind of had to limp along on my own there. We read the Titanic story, and she had all these books about various countries of the world, and we read those. And she liked to, if I had a new dress, I was supposed to come and show it to her, and she couldn't see it, but she could feel it, and she could tell you, this is cotton, or this is whatever, it's usually cotton. And she could cook pancakes. She never lost her ability to flip pancakes. And I don't know, she taught me so much. She died when I was 11. And so, you know, I thought about her forevermore. I had another grandma too. Apparently, 3 or 4 months before I was born, my grandpa had a heart attack, they think. I don't know, they didn't really keep good track of why people died then, but that's been some people said he died because he ate too many green apples. But he died suddenly, and so I never knew him. My grandma, who lived down the street the other way from the grandma who was blind, didn't want to live alone, so she moved in with us. And she said the sweetest thing. I don't know if I surely was too little to know it, but I've heard it afterward. She said something to the effect that the angels sent me to Grandma so she wouldn't be lonesome. And here I go. I wasn't going to do this, but I probably will. Anyway, I thought that was the sweetest thing you could say to a kid, and I never forgot it. Well, Mom was a wonderful, wonderful seamstress. She made costumes for the local tap dancing school. And she made all my clothes and all my sister's clothes, and I learned to sew from her. It was not a singer. We never could afford a singer, but it was a pedal machine. And I learned to do that when I was just a kid, to pedal. And I want you to know, don't forget this, that I got the blue ribbon in the Ozark Empire Fair for making a little apron, and it had to be handmade. And I learned to blind stitch, except my mom came out and looked at it and she said, well, you'd have to be blind not to see them. So I had to pull them all out and start over. But I did get that blue ribbon, and I was real proud of that. I really was. It's probably still somewhere down in our basement. Most everything else is. And so that was fun. I led a charmed life. I really did. And things came my way that I had no right to expect, and they still do. And it's just kind of wonderful. I like being there. Let's see, what do I have here next? My dad grew up on a farm about 25 miles from Springfield, and he went through 8th grade, and then he couldn't go any further and stay there. They didn't go any further than 8th grade, so he came up to Springfield, I think, thinking he could go on to school, but instead he met my mom, and they got married, and so he did very well with an 8th grade education. He ran a warehouse for food, and big boxes of food, and then later he drove an oil truck for the last many years. He retired from there. So I guess, people didn't all go to high school then. They didn't all go to college. They didn't get the educations that we think we have now. Dad had been too young to go into World War I. World War II came up. He was 1 year too old to be drafted for that, so he kind of lucked out in there, but my brother did. He was drafted while he was still in high school, and they let him finish high school, and then he had to go. I was, I don't know, 5 years old, I think, when he left, or somewhere around that, and I had to learn to write because somebody had to write to Gene. And so I wrote little letters to Gene. I found one of them the other day, and he'd write back to me, and we had this going on all through the time he was away. And I never got any better at it. I just, just wrote little letters to him. I like to read, I like to write, I like to do all those things still today. Gene bought me, when he came back home, he bought me a pocket knife. It was about that long, and I'm pretty sure Mom didn't know he gave me a pocket knife, but it was really pretty. It had a red handle, and he taught me how to play mumbledy peg. I don't know what that is anymore. If anybody knows what it is, tell me afterwards. But he taught me to play mumbledy peg. He also taught me how to quilt, and he taught me how to eventually change a car tire before I could be driving. So I got good treatment. He taught me to play, my sister taught me to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. She was the family pianist. And at one point after we grew up, I was the organist for one church in Springfield, and she was the organist for another Baptist church in Springfield. There were 39 Baptist churches in this town. It was about the size of Columbia. Talk about being in the Baptist belt. Most of them were Southern Baptist, but not all of them. Some were fundamental, and some were, one was a Northern Baptist, and so forth. So, I don't know where I was going with that, but she taught me how to play piano. I played chopsticks because she taught me how. And we would gather around. Now, this is going to sound like something you get from Willie Nelson, but we gathered around the piano a lot, and we would sing. Daddy sang bass, and Mom sang tenor, and me and little brother, whatever, however that goes. And it was just so much fun. And we always sang "I'll Fly Away." And I still play that for, more often than I ought to, but it's a good song. Well, Grandma Gordon lived with us after Grandpa died. She and Grandma Nichols was the one who read Idols of the King. Grandma Gordon wanted me to learn how to do things like play songs on the piano, and I didn't do too well. I was about 5 years old when she died. But I learned to pick out, will there be any stars in my crown? You know, it's all about, what have I done? Will there be any stars when I die? And it's a good song. When I was a teenager, still at Boulevard Baptist, I was the leader of the devotional moments or something at Training Union, and we did one day. I kind of con all my friends into it, and the poor boyfriend, he was always having to star in those little shows that I put on. And we had a big crown with light bulbs, Christmas tree bulbs to get through it. And you had to read your verse and go up and turn on a light, and pretty soon the whole crown lit up, and I thought that's really great stuff. And it kind of led me into some stuff that happened later for me. I'll get there eventually. I want to say just a word about Grandpa Nichols. He looked like Abe Lincoln. He worked on the railroad. And at the railroad crossing between me and my elementary school, there was no gate to come down, so he'd stand there and tell kids when they could cross. And I had to help him out afterwards. I was a really, really good helper. So he had this heavy lunch box, and he couldn't carry it home, so he'd tell me to carry it home. If I found anything in it worth eating, go ahead and eat it. Well, there was always something worthwhile. There was always a treat in that box. And so that was fun. And I heard him say, he didn't say much, but I heard him say to my mom one day, Mom, that girl, or no, he didn't call her Mom, he called her Evelyn, that girl has hair like a shiny penny. And I really like to be in a redhead. I know they say blondes have more fun, but I'm not sure it's true. I'm sure I like to be in a redhead. And so if I show up as a redhead again someday, don't be too surprised. It's kind of a victim of the COVID time. I had an aunt who lived in the country. She was Daddy's only sister. He only had one sibling. And I'd go down there every summer. We'd all go down for a visit, and I'd stay. And I stayed 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and sometimes the whole summer. I got to play with a little calf. He'd follow me around like a puppy. I got to help him, well, not exactly help, but I got to get in the way while I milked the cows. I got to go with my Uncle Estrel, and we'd go into town, and always he had to stop at the sweet shop, and we had to get something sweet to eat, ice cream, whatever. And I was obliged to help him out do that. I got to ride on the threshing machines as they cut the, I don't know what it was, wheat, hay, I don't know what it was. But anyway, they cut the grain and just all kinds of fun things. It's just a fun life. And it still is. It's still a fun life. I have 2 kids of my own now, and they're off on their own. They both live on the West Coast, which is way too far away. It really is. It wasn't so far before COVID and messed up all the transportation. You could get on an airplane and go, but now that's harder to do. Leslie lives in Oregon, and she runs a bed and breakfast. She used to work for NOAA, and she got tired of that because they were always sending her off to Japan. And she now owns this bed and breakfast. She builds a lot of little outdoor cabins for it. She's very resourceful. She's amazing. She kind of, her attitude when she was a kid was, if a man can do it, I can do it. She does. She does it all. She drives across country once in a while, but it's a long drive. And so I don't see much of her right now anyway. When she entered 1st grade, and I just have loved this story, so I'm gonna lay it on you guys. We had lived in Germany by that time, and I'll get to that in a little bit. And she had learned a lot of German over there. She was just a young thing. And when she got into 1st grade, what is the music? Oh, I thought it was an angel singing over there. Oh, okay. My phone doesn't sound that good. Anyway, when she went to 1st grade, her teacher called me. Her teacher was the 1st-year teacher, and she was very concerned because she had asked the kids to stand up and count as far as they could count. And Leslie stood up and she counted to 100 in German. Which I thought was kind of cool, but it scared the teacher. A few days later, she called me up again, the teacher, and she said, I think we have a real problem with this child. We need to consider it a therapist for her. Well, she only used brown crayons, only brown crayons. Would I come in for a conference? So I went in and I said, Les, how come you only use brown crayons? And she said, "Because the others all got lost, Mom, that's all I got left." So we didn't worry about the therapist at that point. We just bought some more crayons, great big box. And that's Leslie. I also have a son, one son, his name is John Nathan. And Nathan after, Ann, Leslie was Leslie Ann after Anne of Green Gables, Ann with an E. And John was John because he had to be John because his father was the 17th John Lawrence and he had to be the 18th. And his son now, he has a little boy who's just so cute. And he's also John. And John was a bicyclist in Colorado. He went to Colorado to school. He went first to Virginia Tech. He didn't like it down there. He said they say mean things about black people. And he left school because his favorite person in the whole world was and is, I think, Idella. He just loves Idella. And he spent most of his young life trying to sit by Idella so he could sing with Idella. And he still does when he comes home. So anyway, he comes home more often than Les does or did, but now he's got 2 little boys of his own, so he's not as free to come and go. We're going to try to get out to California sometime pretty soon, I hope. Now, the other member of my family who meant so much to me, I really think he was one of the greatest influences on my life. He turned out to be my brother-in-law, but when I first saw him, he was just strolling across the lawn to pick my sister up for a date, and she was running late, as kind of as usual. And she said to me, "You just go out there and tell him to sit down and wait." So I went out, I was 8, 9 by then, and sat down on the front porch, was playing pickup sticks. And I wasn't any good at it, and I kept knocking them all over. And he said, "Can I play too?" And he sat down and he played too. He taught me so many things. He taught me how to play croquet. He taught me how to make perfume out of rose petals, which I needed to do to get my campfire badge. He taught me how to catch a baseball. I know how to catch a baseball. You have to look at it. I didn't know that. He taught me how to drive. He taught me I had an eye surgery when I was, I don't know how old I was. I had one when I was 12, one when I was 20. And after one of those, I was having double vision. And so he figured out with me, what am I going to do about that? We decided if I'd walk between the two, I'd be in the right place. And so that's what I did. And I was out driving between the two, and I'd be grounded. I would have been grounded for life if anybody known that. But it worked. It worked. So if you ever have to have eye surgery and have double vision, just go between the two. I had a little bit of a chance to repay Smokey for being so good. His name was really Marvin, but even nobody ever called him that. He was Smokey. And he had a heart attack in 1993. It was a pretty awful bad one. And somebody had to stay with him that summer. And my sister was about to retire, but she couldn't get a retirement if she hadn't finished out that whatever period of time. So I got to go and stay with him. And we had such a good summer. We just went all over town. I had to drive. We went to the new church to see the stained glass windows. We went out to the apple orchard and got apples all the time because he liked apple cider. And I don't know what all we did. We'd sit and talk for hours. We'd do some little adventure every day. And that was it. That was his last summer. But he made a difference in everything I did thereafter. My mom got real tired, and my brother did too, because I asked questions all the time. I wanted to know, what is that? What is that? What is that? And they'd always say, why don't you go out and get some fresh air? But Smokey never met a question he didn't like. He'd either answer it or he'd tell me how to go get the answer, or we'd go together and get the answer. And it was just really, really kind of wonderful. Let me take a look and see where I am here. Hang on a minute. Oh, yeah. Okay, back to church for a minute. Boulevard Baptist Church I was the redhead, and the preacher had 5 redheaded kids, and he was a redhead, and his wife was a redhead. So they kind of said, well, anytime you want cookies, come by. And so I went back for cookies to their house until oh my goodness, I don't know, they were both in their 90s, I think, the last time I had cookies there. And he was a really great preacher. My dad kept his membership in Schofield, where he'd grown up. It's a little town down a little ways from Springfield. And he never moved his membership, he kept it down there. The kids used to sit in the balcony, the kids that could get away with it, teenagers in particular. And one day, we were all sitting up in the balcony, and I don't know why, but we were shooting paper wads and passing notes and behaving really badly for teenagers. We were old enough to know better. And the preacher stopped his sermon, and he said to my mom, Evelyn, if you don't mind, would you go up there and sit between our kids? And I thought I was probably dead. That would be the end of me. That I'd be grounded until I was 90. But she took it on stride, but the balcony was never opened again that I remember. I never again got to sit in the balcony. I joined the church when I was 10, I believe. And when it was time for me to get baptized, I was all dressed up in this really pretty dress. My mom made it. It was white, but it had little purple flowers all through the material. And I got all dressed up, and I wanted to run up to the peewee trees, which are up the other end of the block. There were 2 trees that had little, I don't know what they were, seeds, I guess, that you could shoot through straws at people. And so I went up to the peewee trees, and I was going to leave a note for my girlfriend, telling her that I was going to go be baptized and I'd see her tomorrow. So I took my pocket knife that Jean had given me, and I held the note up like this, and whoops, and I was going to stab it into the tree so it would stay there. Well, I missed, and I stabbed it totally through my finger, which was bound to stay there. And I started yelling and screaming, oh, get Smokey, he'll know what to do. Oh, bring Smokey. Well, finally somebody got Smokey, and he came up, and I don't know how he did, I don't remember, but he got me loose and got the knife out. And I went to be baptized with my hand all wrapped up. And I don't remember what dress I wore, and I don't think my mom was too happy with me that night. But I did go and get baptized. I started playing piano at church when I was 9 years old. We met for, I don't know if any of the rest of you did this, probably, if you grew up in Baptist churches. In the junior department, when you were, I don't know what, 9 years old, maybe 10 years old, you would go to Sunday school and you would sing a couple of songs or choruses or whatever, and you'd have a little devotional, and then you'd go to your Sunday school class. And so I was playing the piano when I was 9, not very well, but that's the best they had. So, and then I got promoted to intermediate when I got old enough not to be a junior, and I played for them. And my piano teacher was a church pianist. And so every now and then she'd want to get up and go down and stand with somebody that had come down for the altar call or whatever. And so she'd motion me, and I'd go play, slip in and play, usually in the middle of Just As I Am. 47 verses later, just as I am, I'd get off. I really knew how to play that one. And some years later, I don't know exactly when, I think I was still in high school, but I might have been in college. I got a phone call, and it said, it was from the new choir director. Nobody knew him very well. And he said, I would like you to come down to church and play the organ for me. Well, I didn't have any idea how to play an organ. And I really didn't even know what the parts were. And so I went down and talked to him. It seems that my piano teacher didn't get along with this new director, and she quit. She said, I'm not going to play for this kind of nonsense. And she moved across town and played for another church. And he said, I would like for you to play it, and I'll show you how. Well, he knew a little bit. He knew there were pedals on for your foot, and he knew you could turn it on with the on switch, you know. And I said, well, when do you want me to start? And he said, well, let's see, it's Wednesday. How about Sunday? Well, I spent those days all day. I spent down there playing that organ, or figuring out how the organ worked. And I became the church organist. And I don't know how I ever did it, but I turned out to be the organist for that church. And I stayed there all through college, because that's where I went to school, was in Springfield. And then went off to Germany. And then I went back later, while my husband at the time was in Vietnam, and I became the organist there again. And so it's been an important church to me. There's nobody there anymore really that I know, but I do keep in touch with, there were 4 of us girls who ran around together all the time, and every summer after I moved to Maryland, I'd go back there, because there were 3 of them there, and anyway, I'd go back, and we'd all go to lunch and have fun together. They're all gone now, except for one, and she and I are still in touch. We write to each other once a month or so, you know. And if I'm in Springfield, I will stop and see her. And she was, I was called Gordoni because we had a secret club. And she was called Nelsoni because her name was Nelson. And we started it out as sort of a French club, and I was Gordonnet, and she was Nelsonnet. So, and I think it's been just wonderful to keep her all these years. It's been so much fun. When I left, well, I stayed there. One day, yes, was school. I don't know where my notes are. And they called me up. They had an assembly. It was the honors assembly. I wasn't expecting any honors. And they called me up to the stage and they awarded me a scholarship for 2 years at the the University of Missouri was in Columbia, but the branch of it was in Springfield. And they offered me a 2-year scholarship with books paid for. And I hadn't planned to go to college. Nobody in my family had ever been to college. So I took it home and I showed it to my dad and mom. And Dad said, well, all right, you're going to go. And I said, I don't even know where it is, Dad. And so we found it. We found the campus. I was afraid I'd never find the buildings because I'm always going the wrong direction. You know, I was a kid in gym class who they'd say, what do they say, right hut or something, and I'd go the other way. And anyway, I took up the scholarship and I did go. And I loved every minute. Oh, my goodness. So that was it. I was hooked forevermore. And I went on and got my master's degree at the same place. And then I went to Germany. I think that's when I went to Germany. I can't keep the dates straight anymore, too many of them. But that was when the draft was in effect and folks had to go where they had to go. And so my husband at the time, they asked where did we want to go, and we said France because I had kind of triple majored in college, and I had French and social studies or history and English. So they sent us to Germany. being only German, but German is a great language to learn. It's so exciting, and it's a really solid, vital language. So I took German courses, and so I could converse with my German landlady, and I could go out all around town. And once I was on a bus taking a sightseeing tour, and there's supposed to be a German guiding it. Never showed up. They had no tour leader, and they didn't know what to do. And my friend said, "Well, you could do it." And I did, for what it was worth. I don't know how good it was, but I know I really so I liked German. I lived there for 3 years. And Leslie went to school there. John didn't exist at the time, but we had a good time in Germany. Traveled a lot. Every time there was any, open space or any time off, you live in Germany, you're right in the middle of all of the European countries. And we took off for Florence, about the time of the Florence flood, remember that? And looked out the window, and there was our car. It was a little Corvair. It was so pretty, a little silver Corvair. And there it went.
Oh, down there, no.
Oh, yeah, I don't know where it landed. The insurance paid for it, but you had to go to Rome to get it. And you had to wade in knee-high mud to get out of the city, because nothing was coming into Florence. And those big, beautiful gold doors that you see on the Florence Cathedral, pictures of it, they were all face down in the mud. And that was pretty exciting. And I was already hooked on travel, and that didn't hurt any. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about travel. First, I do want to say, though, that the first time I came to CBF, I was living here in Columbia. We had been all over at this area looking for a church because we wanted Leslie to be in church, in Sunday school. Her dad was Methodist, and I was Baptist, and that didn't much matter because we both figured we could live with either one of them, But we just couldn't find a church that we liked. And so one Sunday, I brought Leslie and I said, "Let's go try this church that's listed in the flyer, see what it's like." And it was CBF, and it was real small. They were meeting in the Presbyterian church over on 108, is that where it is? And so we sat there. And Jim Hamlin, I didn't know him from anybody. He got up 10 minutes into his sermon. I realized that is where we belong. And I could say a lot about Jim Hamlin, but I won't. He was really a fine man. Still is, I guess. I'm disappointed that he's not coming he can't come to this reunion thing we're having. But it was amazing. And I never looked back from CBF, never wanted to be anywhere else. So, and there's nothing else like CBF. It doesn't operate like ordinary churches. It's different. It's better. Travel. There was a song when I was, I don't know what, probably a teenager. And it was See the Pyramids Along the Nile. You remember that? And I thought, I gotta see those. Oh well, I'm going to see those. And I carried on about that, and finally my mother said to me, "People like us don't do that." And I knew better than to say, maybe you don't, people like you don't know, but watch me. I've traveled now in 105 different countries, a lot of them multiple times. And I love traveling. And I think it's over. I don't know that I can do it anymore, that you can't get where you're going and you can't trust Putin and, a lot of reasons not to travel too far. But I still got a couple of trips in me, I think, but they're not, yeah. When I retired, that's when you travel. And I could have retired a lot earlier than I did, but I kind of got the idea that if I kept working, I could save money, and that would be for traveling after I retired. And it worked out real well. The day I retired was in 2006, and I was teaching, and I had not really wanted to be a teacher, but that was, you know, that's what I ended up with, and I learned to love it. And that day, we left, the day after that, we left for China. And it was such a neat trip. We came down the river all the way from Beijing to Shanghai. We spent time in Hong Kong. It was part business and part just fun. And that was it. There's a quote from Michael Palin about how once a travel bug bites you, there's no known antidote. that was for sure. We went to Russia before it was, before it was the mess it is today. They were just really nice people. They really were. And I feel sorry for them today. But their food was so boring. Oh my goodness. We ate fish for 3 weeks every day, morning, noon, and night. And fish are fine, but good gracious. We also went to 9 countries in Asia on a business trip for Ben with World Relief. They paid my way to go on too, and I would interview all the missionaries and see what they needed and what do you want from us? What can we get you and send back to you? And so we packed boxes of books and pencils and pens and things you take for granted here that they didn't necessarily have. We traveled through Thailand, and it was in Thailand, I think, that they told the person we were staying with, he was a missionary, he said they didn't like to kill snakes. They don't like to kill anything in Thailand, but they don't like snakes. So they throw all the snakes over into his yard, and he killed them. So we stayed there, but we didn't get up and run around in the middle of the night. The ceiling of the place where the room we slept in was all covered with little geckos. The gecko on TV. And they told us, don't worry about them, they fall off, they're just babies. I never, if they fell off, they didn't fall on me, or I would have been yelling. But, and that was a nice trip. That really was a nice trip. What else did we do? Let's see. Oh, we went to Calcutta. And that's because I had to see Calcutta. I just had to see it. And we got there and we went to Mother Teresa's. She had a place for the lepers, and she had a place for the babies, the orphanage that she ran. And I wanted to go to the leper thing, but we never got there. Somehow we got, I guess, in the wrong directions. I don't know, we got to the baby one. But it was really kind of neat. While we were there, something clanged. It was a signal for something to happen. And all of a sudden, here they came. All these 2-year-old kids, and they were all bare, and they had all these little potties sitting around. It was potty time. And they all sat down. It was something like 200 bare-bottom babies sitting there. And we were not allowed to take pictures, darn it. But that was cool. And they told us that Mother Teresa was sorry she wasn't there to meet with us. She always met with visitors. And I was sorry she wasn't there too. I'd like to have met her. But we did get to see the babies. And while we were there, I wanted to go to the temple. We had a driver that drove us around all over. One of the people that Ben was working with provided for us. So he took us to the Kali Temple. Do you know Kali? K-A-L-I? I knew it because I had studied it in one of my courses in history. Kali is the goddess of fertility and of war. And she demanded that she have human sacrifices, and her fountains were to be filled with blood and not water. And by the time we got there, they weren't doing that anymore. The British had cleaned that up, you know, it was like when they came in. But they were still offering sacrifices, and we didn't know that when we went in there. And the sacrifices were not human, but they were animal. And I caught a glimpse of them with this poor little goat. And they were about to slit his throat, and I was about to faint. And Ben grabbed me and kind of pointed me the other direction. And I never have been able to get that little goat out of my mind. He provided a really good essay for me when I was taking classes by then at St. Mary's in their philosophy and religion ecumenical program. And I wrote a paper about good news for little goats, modern goats, that's what it was. Good news for modern goats. No animal sacrifices are required anymore. So that was worth the trip. Ben and I took a cruise. We could only do this because of J.W. and Dave Larco, but we took a 7-week cruise through trying to get to Australia. And we went to Australia, we went to Bora Bora, we went to Fiji, we went to Vanuatu, which was a little island that not far from Samoa, went there too. Came home by way of Hawaii. That was a really amazing cruise. It was wonderful. And we got to hold the koala bear. We got to feed a kangaroo. I got acquainted with an emu who kept tagging around after me. And like the one on TV now for the advertisement for that insurance company, he was an emu that we became friends. Traveling's been about one of the neatest things in my entire life. I really have loved every minute of it. And when you travel, you kind of begin to meet people. On our trip to China, I signed up for the Tai Chi in the morning, which I couldn't do. And I was really clumsy with it. But you know who is all in it right in front of me every day? Alex Trebek. And we had dinner with Alex Trebek, and we had breakfast with Alex Trebek. And I was already a Jeopardy fan. And I like Ken Jennings too, but he's not quite Alex Trebek. So that was neat. Let me see here what comes next. Organizing these things is the worst part of it, isn't it? You can't, what do you do with all these years? Okay. I went to Machu Picchu. Ben didn't go on that one because he was busy working here. And but I told him I'd send him a postcard, you know. But, I went to Machu Picchu with my friend Judy that I had met years ago in Germany, and we're still good friends. And we went to several other places together too, but we went to Machu Picchu, and there's no air there at all. It's way up too high, and they were selling oxygen, cans of oxygen for you to take with you to breathe. The hotel was, I had to order oxygen one night, I just couldn't get any air at all. For I think it was $100 a night, they would bring in oxygen tanks for you. And but Machu Picchu was beautiful, just beautiful. And oh, it was the same trip that we went down the Amazon River. Came from Machu Picchu, we stopped at the Galapagos, we went to the Amazon, and in the Amazon, I had somehow developed this just earth-shaking headache. It was really bad, and I didn't know what to do about it. I took headache medicine, but that didn't do it. And this was the afternoon that we went out to visit and to watch the, I want to call him a witch doctor. He wasn't a witch doctor. He was a shaman, thank you. He was a shaman, a local shaman, and he offered to cure anybody that had any problems. So I volunteered. Then I kind of got scared and I thought, oh boy, there's something in the Bible about this. So, but he put me out in the middle and he went around and he blew smoke and he said all kinds of things and he waved his hand. Said, when he got finished with me, I didn't have one trace of a headache. My head hadn't felt that good, I don't think, ever. And I don't know if it was something in the smoke. But I know I always felt a little nervous about pouring after strange gods, or that's the way it goes. And but it was a good cure, good cure. I went to the Galapagos to see, because I wanted to see Lonesome George. You know Lonesome George? He was the only remaining member of his species on Earth. But that's pretty lonesome. And they lived all over. They're big, he's a big turtle, one of those big, huge turtles. And they tried to match him up with a female turtle, and he wasn't having any of it. They were all the wrong species. So he ended up, he had his own place on the island. He had his own little pond to swim in, but he had nobody. And so I got to see him. You couldn't get close enough to touch him, but you could see him. And the only person he had access to was his guardian. There was a man there, a Spanish man, who took care of him. So I kept a little journal at the time, and here it is here. And when he died, I wrote an entry about him, what it must have been like to be Lonesome George. And he did a lot of good, though, because he was there. They set up this station, called it the Darwin Training Center, something like that. And they protected the turtles, and they protected the other wildlife, and they kept all these things going. And I think they've gone from like 30 of these turtles and to now something like 3,000 are roaming around. And you could sit down and talk to the others. You couldn't get close to George, but I sat down and got to cuddle one of the turtles and pet him on the head and all of that. I want to talk just a little bit about the animals, because they've been so special to me. When I was at home, I was a kid, I had a black cat named Pansy. She had one white hair right in the center of her head. And she would curl around my neck at night and sleep. Now, she was supposed to be an outdoor cat, and I don't know how the doors ever got open to let her in. My mother would say, I hope that old cat doesn't come in here and go to bed. That old cat always did. And we had a white cat named Snowball. She was totally deaf. White cats often are. But she was a fighter. She'd chase anybody came in our yard, she'd chase them out. Dogs, squirrels, didn't matter. And she lived to be 19. After I left home and was on my own to make these decisions, I got a beautiful little puppy named Bish, and he was a schnauzer, miniature schnauzer. Bichon didn't last long enough to get his distemper shot. Poor little guy. But then we got Paprika Schnitzel Fritz after that. And Schnitzel, then he lived to be 17. She was a she. And this is when Ben came into my life, and she didn't really, well, she liked this strange man. But she ended up liking the strange man a whole lot. And we all moved in together. Then we had, Ben and I together got Daisy Jo McBairn. She was Scottish, so we had to have a Scottish name. And Jo, of course, in Scottish means sweetheart. So she was Daisy Jo McBairn, and she lived to be 14. And we don't have a dog now because we figure we won't live long enough to outlive it. And also, I don't like to get out and walk on the ice. So Dave and Meg Larco have been so kind to us. We get to keep their dog when they go on vacation. We got to have Nilla with us. She was called, her name was Vanilla, I think. She was like a vanilla wafer. But, and Nilla stayed with us while they went on vacation, when they were moving and all this stuff. And now they got a new dog, and it's been a year or two, but named Bristol. And Bristol is going to come and stay with us during the grand weekend that's coming up. So we told them, yes, you're welcome to stay, but you got to bring Bristol. And, which they would have anyway, I think. And we've been up there to see them. They got me into their church. It's the church Dave grew up in, to play the organ. It's a pipe organ, 20,000 pipes. Oh, and that, what? 2,000? Oh, just felt like 20,000. Huh? Okay. Well, it was a big organ, and I got to play it, and that was fun. That was lots of fun. Playing together with Dave has been one of the real wonderful adventures in my life. I learned so much from him. It's just incredible. And we got to the point where we could just kind of read each other. We played together for 30 years, and I was not real pleased when they moved off, but they didn't ask my permission, so. But it'll be fun to have them coming back. I want to introduce you just briefly to a couple of animals I've known when we were traveling. We went to Gibraltar on one trip, Ben and I, and an ape jumped up on my shoulders and was hanging onto my hair. That was how we got around. He was hanging onto my hair. That was so much fun. It was so neat. He didn't look like, he's not an ape like King Kong, He was more like a monkey, but we did that. In the Amazon, there was a little sloth down beside me that had come out of the tree somehow, and he wanted to climb again, so he started climbing up me. And pretty soon I had this sloth wrapped around me, and the lady who owned the sloth, it was her pet. She lived there in the jungle, and she saw what was happening, and she came and got him. But it was fun. Oh, this little. I think if you give them a chance, animals like you, if you like them, and I do like them. When I went to Tunisia, there are a lot of cats in Tunisia, and every now and then somebody jump on my shoulder, ride around for a while. It's easier than walking, I guess, and then jump off again. Tunisia was an interesting country. And then when we got to Australia, we got to hug the koala bears. My koala bear looks, Ben, we have pictures of Ben holding one, I'm holding one. Mine looks scared to death, and it had a good reason to be, because they are so heavy. And I thought, I'm going to drop him, I'm going to drop him, I'm going to drop him. He just kept slithering. But we held, I had made friends with the emu. We wanted to see platypus, so we asked for directions. We had to get on the city bus, I think, first, and then that took us out far enough that we could get onto this old train that went across the fields, and so we got onto the train. It took hours to get out to this zoo, and then when we got there, well, yeah, there's a platypus house. It's the last one back. So I don't know how far we traveled, but we finally did get to see platypus. You couldn't touch him, he was behind glass. But there's such strange looking animals, with the big bill. And in Africa, Africa, land of elephants, we got to ride an elephant. We got to sit and talk to an elephant and hold his trunk and see how it worked. And if you had food in your hand, he'd just go, and you felt like your whole arm was going to go off. But he was friendly. They were friendly. Also in Africa, we went walking with the adolescent lions. And I knew they were lions and we were gonna go walk with lions, but I didn't know they were adolescents. And once I heard that, I thought, oh dear, I hope they're not like the teenagers that I teach. But they were pretty friendly, but we were warned, you had to stay behind them, because if they saw you, they were not hungry, they fed them a whole lot. But if they saw you, they'd think you were a toy. And you don't want to be a toy for a lion. So we walked with the lions. I don't know what else we've done. The giant turtles in the Galapagos. We went to, in Lanzarote, we rode more camels. We rode like camels. We stayed in the Holy Lands for a while, up on the Mount of Olives. And we were staying in this, we called it the Four Camel Hotel, because every day they'd come out with four camels and you could have a ride if you wanted to, you didn't pay for it or anything. And we rode around the pyramids. We went into the pyramids. I don't recommend that too much. It was called, anybody been in the pyramids? Well, what'd you think? Did you like it?
No.
No, it was terrifying, I thought.
It is.
And Ben's kind of claustrophobic anyway, so he was real unhappy. We went up with all these, in this line of people, and it was hot, and there was no air in there that I could kind of find out about. We went on a march, and we got up to where they buried the people, and they had the tomb up there, and we saw the sarcophagus and all that. And then we had to get out and running down, and we got out eventually. But that's one thing. There aren't too many things we've done that I wouldn't do again, but that's one I would not do again. That was just awful. Maybe if Egypt had winter time, it weren't so hot, maybe they could do it then. Well, I've got lost my place here. I went to another camel right out the Sahara Desert, because I took my niece Patty and I were traveling together, and we got all dressed up. We went out to the Sahara Desert. They were going to take us to the special thing with the Bedouins. What it was a cocktail party, and the Bedouins offered us cocktails, and then we got back on our camels and we went back home. I never have really decided what I wanted to be when I grew up. I think because I had that free scholarship, I went to school. I loved the school, and I went on and got my master's. I couldn't make up my mind, though. I never could make up my mind about anything. And so when I left college, I needed like 2 more courses to have a triple major. I had English, I had social studies, and I had French. And I went job hunting after the second degree, and I wanted to go to Kix radio station there in Springfield. It was the one that played all the rock and roll. It's the first one to play Elvis, and just all kinds of neat things. So I applied for an interview there to write copy, and they offered me the job, but the salary was all but non-existent because every kid in town wanted that job, and they didn't have to pay anybody to do it. So that one didn't work. I interviewed by a whole bunch of school systems. There were all these little towns around, and they wanted you to drive the bus, coach some team, and teach 3 different subjects. So that didn't suit me. I finally got to an interview by the Springfield school system, which was the big one in that part of the world. And they offered me a job in a junior high, which wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was in a brand new building. It opened that year, and I went there and I taught, and I kind of liked it. It was fun. And a couple of years later, I transferred to high school, and that was really fun. Before I ended up with my long career there, I stayed teaching for like 35 years, something like that. 35, maybe 40, piecing it all together. And before I got done, I was at that high school. They hired me to be the chair of the French department. I didn't know how to be a chair of anything, but it worked out okay. It was a place where the missionaries came with their kids. And the missionary school was across the street from our high school. And so they already knew how to speak French. They didn't know how to read it, they know how to write it, but they knew how to speak it. So I made a deal with them. You know, you teach me how to speak, I teach you how to write. And it worked out pretty well, actually. And I learned a lot. I don't know if they did, but I learned an awful lot. I have taught in several high schools. I ended up in Baltimore County here as the chair of the English department in a school that had 17 English teachers. I ended up directing plays at first at Randallstown, and we did the Diary of Anne Frank. And we brought in all the nursing homes around for the last rehearsal, and that was that really. So I ended up having to extend it. We had added 3 nights to the performance because people were coming. I mean, they really wanted to see this Anne Frank. We wrote to Anne Frank, and I didn't. I had the kids do it, and we got back all this material and pictures and personal testimonies. I don't know what else, just all kinds of exciting stuff, and that was fun. I didn't know how to direct a drama when I started, but I kind of learned a lot from that. And then we went on to do Romeo and Juliet. We had 200 kids try out for Romeo and Juliet, of all things. And they had to try out by reciting the Shakespeare passage. And I thought this was something like a miracle, maybe. But we had so much fun. And they all came, and the ones who were left over who didn't get parts, we put them in charge of the festival, the medieval festival. And so they came up with refreshments and all kinds of good things to do out in the lobby during the intermissions. And we had Romeo and Juliet first. After Romeo and Juliet, we had West Side Story, and that was fun to do. They don't recommend that for high schools. It's supposedly too hard, and nothing's too hard for them. You tell them they can do it, they can do it. Tell them it's too hard, you know. And they did a wonderful job with that. And then we ended up at the end of the year doing one more play because we just didn't have any quitting since. And we did the Fantastics, and that one we scrambled everything up. And so I didn't direct that one. One of the kids did. I played piano for that one. And it was fun. It was fun life. Retirement was fun too. The year I retired, 2006, they dedicated the senior prom to me, which I thought was so lovely. And they were all lined up. And when I and my date went in, they gave us hugs. And so it was a nice life. I didn't ever make any decisions. I don't know how I ended up anywhere. Everything just kind of fell into my lap, and it was lovely when it did. I did apply for one thing. I applied for a Fulbright. And I got it the year that Ben and I were going to be married. And so we went off to England, and Ben got a degree from Nottingham University, and I taught in Sheffield. And we still have really good friends in Sheffield who were supposed to come see us right before the COVID stuff broke out, and hopefully they will get to come at some point. We've been back there a couple, 3 times. And it was just such an interesting place to be. I still kind of dabbled around and wanted to be a writer. And so I messed around. I spent one summer. I never did teach summer school because that was my time, and I didn't want to give it up. And so I spent this summer writing, and I have a whole bunch of rejection slips to prove it. And so I gave up on that. But there was a company, I don't think it's there anymore, but it was in Baltimore, and Burl Little knew about it. And I think he worked there as something, I don't know what, off and on, but in any case, not as a writer, but as an editor, I think. But in any case, he got me an appointment, and I wrote 2 books for them. They both got picked up by Prentice Hall, They're still in print. But, you know, the longer you go away from having them be new books, the less money you get. The first year, I got enough money, the royalty check came in, that I could go get Leslie out, and she was in Seattle then. And we went all through Canada. We had daily teas, high teas at the Empress Hotel. We went to Bouchard Gardens. Anybody been there? Oh, isn't it gorgeous? Just gorgeous. There's a volcano, I think, or was at one point, and the most beautiful flowers you ever saw. Just all over the place. So anyway, I took Leslie on that trip the first year. I got royalties again last year, and I took Ben to a wonderful dinner at McDonald's. He's got a lot more books and gets a lot more royalties than I do, so he's now in charge of dinner. I ended up having taught in junior high, middle school, in high school, both Randallstown, Owings Mills, and Missouri. I taught at 3 different universities. I taught at Southwest Missouri State for just 1 year, and then we moved. I taught at the University of Maryland in Germany, at their program there, which was kind of fun, except that one day my favorite student was missing, and I said, where is he? Why is he not here? Because they had to be there if they signed up. They were military people. And they said, didn't you hear? And I said, no, what? Well, he stabbed a guy last night in a bar, so he's not coming back. And he didn't. He never came back. I never knew what happened to him. But I had a guard in the back of the room. If I taught the daytime version, I was on my own. But at night, the guys who were in the class would have time to go out and have a few beers between their duty and what, and then they'd come, and some of them were assigned as a punishment to come to my class. And so it was kind of tricky. So they had a couple of MPs in the back who were to protect me if, and one day this kid, I called on him and he didn't have an answer, and I said something like, we'll try again, and it made him mad. And he came flying down the aisle. And 2 MPs came flying after him, and they were all in a heap in the floor. Very exciting. Very exciting. But it provided enough money to keep traveling. So it was kind of okay. I also taught at the culinary school in Baltimore. I have not got a culinary bone in my body. I don't cook I cook, we don't starve, but I don't cook very well. But at the culinary school, you could learn to cook and go home, or you could get a degree if you took the regular college curriculum along with it. So I was teaching English there, and I taught Othello to this one group. And they weren't tolerant, but they didn't want to do this. And I kind of explained, you got to do it, you know, you're going to get in credit. And as it went on, they got more and more into it. They were learning Shakespeare. And they weren't the kind of kids in that class that would study Shakespeare. And it turned out it worked really well. It really did. And so that was fun. When you're traveling, you get to meet people. You know, I got to meet Alex Trebek. I also got to meet Conway Twitty. And Conway Twitty that's where it is. He's probably my favorite country music singer, and I like most country music singers. And I met him at Branson, and he chatted a while, and oh my. I still have the shirt that he gave this autograph on. We went into a reception at the British Embassy for one of Ben's contacts, and met the woman who had played harp for Charles and King Charles now, and Diana's wedding, and talked with her for a while. And when I finally got my doctorate, I went down, poor Ben, they wouldn't let him in. He had to look through the fence, and finally he got a seat in the auditorium, but he didn't get to go in for the lineup. And I went in, and there was one person in line already, and a whole crowd milling around, so I went and got in line, and that person was Bernadette Crosby. And she was getting her degree in French Lit, I believe, and I was getting mine in linguistics, which I can't even say, and literature and linguistics, that's the way it worked out. I was real glad she was ahead of me because I was always going off in the wrong direction for everything. And so we got to sit together and listen to the famous speaker who was there. Any guesses? The famous speaker was, what the heck's the man's name? Wait a minute, give me a minute here.
Want to know?
I got it. Bill Cosby. That's when he was a comedian and not a criminal. And so we were all pretty excited about that and listened to him, and I got to meet him too, although I'm not sure if I'm real proud of that, but that's the way it was. I got to meet the Queen Mum when we were in England. This was Queen Mary. Got a beautiful, beautiful invitation. And I got to leave work, and I was working on the Fulbright, I was teaching, and I got to go to England and meet the Queen Mum. And she talked with every one of us. She talked for a while, and you couldn't touch her. You had to wear gloves because ordinary flesh could not touch royal hands, and she didn't have any gloves on. So the people I worked with had got me dressed. They took me out. They told me what dress to buy. They taught me what hat to buy. You had to wear a hat, and they taught me how to curtsy. And I can't do that anymore. I never get up. But I could do it then. And we had lunch with the Queen. And somewhere in our basement, I know the invitation's got to be there, and I can't find it. It's big, and it was really fancy, and they had gold edges. And Ben got to come to that tea, but unless you were the Fulbright scholar, you had to stand behind the rope, the kind of rope they have in the theaters.
Oh, yeah.
He's still not happy about that. And when we went to graduation, he couldn't come in there either, poor little thing. Just peeking across into the room. I have had so many neat things happen to me that I don't know where they came from. They just came to me. And it's been a kind of a charmed life, it really has. I've had 2 scholarships that I didn't ask for. And I'm in Who's Who in America. I've been there for quite a few years. I don't know how you get into those, but I kind of showed up there. I'm in Who's Who in American Women. I'm in Who's Who in Education. Now that one I knew because one of my AP students recommended me for that. It had to be a student recommendation. I was the senior prom honoree and the yearbook honoree and all those wonderful things. But out of every honor there is, the one that's, I think, meant the most to me was that 50-year celebration. And I gotta thank Andrew for that. And Idella came back, and Dave Largo came back, and I don't know what to do with it. It was just wonderful. I would have played forever without all that to reward me, but it sure was nice. It really was. And flowers, so many flowers. Well, I think I probably talked about long enough. I did promise to tell you about Ben, a few things about Ben. You want to hear them? Well, let me tell you about how we went to King's Dominion because I wanted to go to King's Dominion and I wanted to ride the roller coaster because I'm kind of a roller coaster nut. And this is when we were dating. And so, of course, Ben wanted to ride the roller coaster. We went to King's Dominion and we got there and the roller coaster did this thing. And then held you up here for a long time, so long enough that you could figure out what was going to happen to you. And then it went backwards. And that was really exciting. And I learned a whole new vocabulary. I don't know if we've been in any roller coasters since, have we? Or you and I? I've been on a lot with John. John's my kid, and he likes roller coasters, so he'll go in. Leslie doesn't like them. She just throws up. She looks at them. But that was fun. That was kind of fun. And then he took me to dinner at Tursicles, Tursicles in Ellicott City. And it was such a lovely dinner. This is while we were dating. And we sat at the table and we talked and talked. We always talked a lot, still do. And talked and talked and talked and talked. And after a while, after 5 hours, we looked up. Everything was cleared up. The tables were all bare. The waiters had all gone home except for a couple of them who had to kind of stay there because we were there. And they didn't come and say, don't you want to leave now, or here's your bill or anything. We talked for 5 hours at a dinner in Tursicles. At some point, we did a lot of fun things. We went to a lot of parties at Johnny King Junior High up on Rolling Road, because that's where I was teaching then. And they were a partying group, and we'd go out on Friday night and things like that. And we had masquerade parties at Halloween. And one year, Ben went as Jesus in white robes, and I went as a cow. I don't know why. We still got pictures of that. I went riding with him on his motorcycle. I'd ride on the back, and finally I got my own motorcycle. Would you believe that? And he taught me how to ride. And at some point I got scared by that motorcycle and quit riding it. But I was still riding it. I had a stroke back a long time ago. What, 30 years ago, Ben? I don't know how long it's been. 30 what? Oh, 20 years ago. Okay, and I had a motorcycle. Well, when you have a stroke, they take your driver's license away from you, and you have to prove that you can drive. But they let me keep my motorcycle license. Go figure.
Yeah.
And I went up there to take my driving lesson, and right at the beginning of the course, there was a red light came on. I didn't see it, and there shouldn't be a red light when you're just beginning anyway. So I ran the red light, and I had to go home and try again and go from there. So that was not really fun. Well, at some point, we began to sit together at church, and at some point, Ben proposed, and I said, oh, I guess I would like to, but if we're going to get married, I get my own car, always, which is not a problem. The more cars, the better as far as Ben's concerned. And I also wanted my own bank account because I didn't want to have to go and ask if I wanted to buy him a birthday present. Can I have some money? No, it was my own bank account and his own bank account. And it was not my kitchen. Well, it's kind of become our kitchen. That worked out pretty well. Sometimes I cook, sometimes Ben cooks, sometimes we go out to eat. We go out to eat quite a lot. And so it's been a really kind of neat marriage. It really has. We've done all kinds of fun things. And I like flowers, and I've had flower beds for such a long time, but I couldn't do it this year. I couldn't get down there and couldn't get up, and I didn't have any strength anyway. And you should see the flower beds at our house. They are so pretty. Ben went out and planted them, and there they are. And we have kept seeds from one group of these flowers. They were my mom's, and she left seeds, and we plant them every year. We harvest them, we plant them again. They're all coming up now. We have a rose bush from my dad that my grandmother supposedly had brought over from Germany, and it grew in our front yard for years, and brought that up here, and it's still blooming. And I keep wondering, Ben's done so much for me. Is there anything I've ever done for him? And I decided what I had done. I gave him puppy dogs. He never had a puppy dog. And that seemed to work pretty well. And well, yeah, sort of. They kind of came with me. My first marriage was good until it was not good. And I don't really want to say any more about that, I don't think, but we still go to date night, every Friday night's date night. And if we can't make it on Friday for some reason, we go some other night during the week. And we've done that for like 43 years, we've been having date nights. And that's a nice way to live, it really is. So we're going to go to Branson this year. It's my favorite place in the whole wide world. It's 25 miles south of Springfield. It's where all the country music people go. I met Conway Twitty there, also met Johnny Cash and a whole bunch of other people, Kenny Rogers, and they're all dead, of course, but we're going to go see the Gatlin Brothers there in October. It's the prettiest place in the world for fall leaves. They're so pretty in Branson. I hope everything's weird this year, so who knows. But we're going to go there in October, and that's going to be fun. I don't know that they care about my cars. Jen suggested you might be interested in what kind of cars I drove, but I don't know that anybody cares. You care? Okay, I'll be quick. When I got the first teaching job, I had to have a car because there was no public transportation went there. And I bought a 1954 Ford. It was so pretty. It was pink and cream colored. Oh, it was a pretty car. But I paid $400. Well, my dad paid $400, and I paid him back because I didn't have any money. And but it didn't last very long. It didn't last half a year until it kind of died by the side of the road and got hauled away. I got a silver Corvair with my first husband in Germany. We lost it in the Florence flood. I had a red Ford station wagon after the kids came along because we went camping and you needed a place for it. I never did like it very much, but it was good for hauling a lot of stuff around in. I had a Vega after the separation of the marriage. It leaked oil all over everything. I carried oil in the back seat and I'd get out and pour in oil every few blocks. And that's how I got along in this silly Vega. I finally got enough money to get it to buy myself a red Honda Civic. It was the bottom of the line Honda, but it was so dependable and it was so good, but it had a hole in it. And the hole was where the cigarette lighter was supposed to go. And I said to the guy, "There's a hole in this car. I don't want a car with a hole in it." And he said, "Oh, that's where the cigarette lighter goes. You can buy one." And I just really made him mad. I said, "I'm not buying one, and I'm not going to take a car with a hole in it." And I turned around to walk out, and he said, "Let me just see what I can do." And the cigarette lighter appeared. There was no hole in the Honda. I kept that all the way through my PhD work, and I got a sabbatical from Baltimore County Schools to go to school. I had a Harvard blue Honda Civic after that. It was kind of a boring car, but it was very grown up and very business-like, so that's why I got it. And then I saw an Audi TT. Oh, did you ever see a prettier car than an Audi TT? And I had to have it, and I couldn't afford it. I was sure I couldn't. And Ben showed me how I could. He's really good at doing that. And I got an Audi TT, and I absolutely loved it until the day that it ate my George Jones tape. And it wouldn't give it back. And I took it to the mechanic, and he took it all apart. And he said, "I will never work on another one of these cars. Everything's packed in there so tightly, and I can't find your tape." And so I traded it in on a Mini Cooper S convertible. It was a nice little car, but I never really fell in love with it. I got skin cancer out of it. I got a really neat scar from the skin cancer, though. It looks like the Star of Bethlehem. And the doctor said to me, "You'll be back here in 5 years. You keep driving that convertible." So I got rid of that. And I now have a red Jeep Renegade. And I'm not sure if I like it or not. I do like that on the back, on surround around the license plate, it says Wadi Tonka. Waddy Tonka was my name for, it meant I had to have a name from Campfire Girls, it meant brave. I'm not very, but I do try to be brave, you know. And my brother-in-law, Smokey, testified that I had been very brave around the wasps which flew around me, and I sat very still and didn't swat one of them. So if you go outside and see my red Jeep, you'll see that Waddy Tonka. And Ben, did I forget anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to share something. You know, she's pretty much a space cadet most of the time. Really, she really is. One day she was talking to some friends and tried to introduce her mother.
That.
Didn't remember her mother's name. Mother never forgave that. So she told you about Daisy Dog, our dog. We went walking together with Daisy. Daisy just walked friend free. You know, was two of us were there. When she took Daisy out by herself, she put Daisy on a leash. So one day she went out with Daisy on the leash, took her for a walk, the usual path, about half a mile. When she got back, Daisy was sitting on the front porch. She had not walked with Daisy, the dog would slip away and she didn't. That's Janet.
Well, maybe.
You know, I'm trying to be very careful. When we go to bed at night, I make sure that the sheets and blankets cover everything. So they go equal side, each side. When I get up in the morning, she's pushed all the covers over to my side.
Right.
We do that.
Are you finished?
For anybody who's interested, I brought a couple of little books of things about her that you can look at. I'll leave them on the tables for anybody to look at. Some pictures, including some of the animals she's talked about, some of the parties she's done, that sort of thing. So, to share.
Did you bring your African pictures? He's got these wonderful pictures of giraffes and elephants and all these critters and lions and really pretty. We took when we were there, I took a zip line thing and Ben did too, but he arranged it over the Zambezi River. And I looked down and I said, oh, look at that, there's a turtle down there. And the guy who was conducting the zip line said, no, lady, that's not a turtle, that's an elephant. So that was fun. I want to say just one more word. When I had that silly stroke, I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do about a stroke. I'm too young to have a stroke, and I'm not athletic, and I don't know if I'll ever get to pull out of this. And then I kind of snapped to and decided, I'm going to pull out of it, I'm going to pull out of it better than I went into it. And I don't know that I quite accomplished that, but I did learn to walk again. I learned to write again. I learned to use my whole left side again. And that was when about the time Steve was leaving. And my gift to Steve was to play, he liked Amazing Grace. And I learned to play it again with both hands. And somebody told me, I can't remember who it was, that the devil was after my hands. And he's still after my hands, you know, that stupid bench falling on him, and he can't have them. And I just told him the other day to get off my porch and take the wasp with you. I don't know if he did or not. He's out there hanging around, I guess. I am not a joiner, but I joined CBF, and here I am, and I've stuck for a long time. And I still am a card-carrying member of the Conway Twitty fan club. Conway went away. He died in 1993, I think it was. But I still carry his card. And I'm still a member, and I'm a member of the Century Travel Club because that's so much fun. I don't travel with them, I just get their literature. But it's fun to do that. You have to have traveled in 100 countries to get it. Right now, I just want to go back to Branson, and I want to go back to England, and I want Putin to go somewhere and leave us alone. And and I want to do things like that. So what I've liked most here ever was playing with Dave. I learned so much from him. I like playing with JW too, but we haven't played together as long. I like playing for Idella. I think she's got the prettiest voice I've ever heard. And when I first heard her 50 years ago, I said, someday, just once before I die, I wish I could sing one song like Idella. Hasn't happened. But maybe in heaven, you suppose? Wouldn't that be fun to sing like Idella? And that's about it. So, thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Miss Janet, for sharing your life story with all of us. I do want to ask that I learned quite a few things. I didn't know that she had a stroke almost 30 years ago. 20 years ago, and look at you now, back and strong, and you've been playing, since then, and that just goes to show that the Lord is a healer, that God is good. But then I also learned how to ride in between. That sounds like a sermon, the devil vision. I think that's going to live again.
Okay.
But there's so much that we learn in your travels. I'm not sure if you really know how blessed you are to have had the opportunity to travel all around the world and to go to some of the wonders of the world and to see, the majesty of God in His creation. It is truly a blessing. Are there any questions, anything that anybody want to ask her before we depart?
They want to ask why I went on for so long.
No questions? Okay, no questions. Well, let's give her another round of applause. Next week is the Reverend Sandra Gray will be sharing with us. She's right there. So we're looking forward to hearing Reverend Gray. And we have a little bit of a conflict. So I'm going to let you guys know who's going to be the following week after Reverend Gray. And then August 30th, the Hawks will conclude our summer series. And then we'll come back in the fall. I'll let you know. We'll take 2-3 weeks off. And in the fall, we'll come back again with a whole new story time. But this has been great up to this point. And I pray that you continue to support it and invite other people. So next week, looking forward to seeing you all again. And we'll make sure we have enough food, because I know Reverend Gray does everything with food, and the food must be amazing. All right. So
Make her cook.
no. We're not gonna cook. I'm gonna pick up the phone, and I'm gonna call Mr. Gray and tell him I need his budget for next week. But anyway, I did bring a piano in here, and I just wanted Janet to close us out.
You know it?
Yeah, I do.
Sing it. Want to do one more?
Go ahead and play.
Well, I want one that you know. And I want to hear some singing.